This is a story to make your flesh creep, because it's told backwards. That's your flesh creep. It's a story for Feewoke and biggle-toed Pete. That's wee folk and bigger people too. This is the story of Cinderella, who lived in an old harked house with a mean old mapstother and her two sister uglies. And they used to make Cinderella do all the wordy-dirk. And one day when she was flopping the moor, the mean old mapstother came in and said, "Guess what? The Prance and Hints are throwing a fancy dress brawl and we're invited. It's a pity you can't come." So Cinderella walked into the kitchen with ties in her ears, and she was just about to chickasee a frickin' when all of a sudden there was a blinding flash of light, and standing before her was a beautiful berry. And Cinderella said, "And who are you and what do you want?" She said, "Well, I'm your berry godfather." Cinderella said, "Well, can I go to the ball?" She said, "That's a tall wish, but okay." So she waved a magic wand, and all of a sudden Cinderella was transformed into a babishing Rooty. She had a long white gut and sound, and a necklace of poopies and rolls. And on her feet were two tiny sass clippers, and the berry godfather said, "Now you may go, but remember you must be mown by midnight. You've got to be back by 12. So Cinderella went to the ball, and soon she cast to the came, and came to the castle. And she walked inside, but she was so beautiful that the mean old mapstother and the two sad blisters didn't even recognise Cinderella. And up walked the Prance and Hints and said, "May I have this chance?" Well, Cinderella was dancing with the Prance and Hints, and he remarked, "You're the most beautiful girl I've ever seen." He said, "You remind me of Beep and Slooty." Well, Cinderella was having an absolutely wonderful time, and all of a sudden the Clarke started to like midnight, and Cinderella ran from the brawl. But as she did, one of the sass clippers clipped from a soot. And the Prance and Hints said, "Now all I have to do is find the soot this clipper pets, and I'll know with whom I've fallen in favour." And so the next day he went from house to house, and you can't turn that around. And soon he came to the Cinderella house Cinderella lived, and he knocked on the door. Well, the mean old mapstother and the two sad blisters came out, but of course their beak were 2 feet. And then came Cinderella's turn, and guess what? The clipper pitted perfectly, they were married and lived happily ever after. And that's the story of Cinderella. But you see, the reason Cinderella succeeded was she never gave up. And as you walk down the pathway of life, never give up. Benjamin Franklin never gave up. Abraham Lincoln never gave up. Winston Churchill never gave up. Oliver Tweedledee, he's he. You see, you don't know because he gave up. And just remember that some of our bubbles are trick and some of our trumbles are whore. But if we had no trumbles, how'd we recognise our racings? There was movement at the station, for the word had passed around that the colt from Old Regret had got away and had joined the Wild Bush horses. He was worth £1,000, so all the cracks had gathered to the fray. All the tried and noted riders from the stations near and far had mustered at the homestead overnight, for the bushmen love hard riding where the Wild Bush horses are, and the stock horse snuffs the battle with delight. There was Harrison, who made his pole and Pardon won the cup, the old man with his hair as white as snow, but few could ride beside him when his blood was fairly up. He would go wherever horse and man could go. And Clancy of the Overflow came down to lend a hand. No better horseman ever held the reins, for never horse could throw him while the saddle ghost would stand. He learned to ride while droving on the plains. And one was there, a stripling on a small and weedy beast. He was something like a racehorse, undersized, with a touch of Timor pony, 3 parts thoroughbred at least, and such as are the mountain horsemen prized. He was hard and tough and wiry, just the sort that won't say die. There was courage in his quick impatient tread, and he bore the badge of gameness in his bright and fiery eye and proud and lofty carriage of his head. But still, so slight and weedy, one would doubt his power to stay. And the old man said, "That horse will never do for a long and tiring gallop. Lad, you'd better stop away. Those hills are far too rough for such as you." So he waited, sad and wistful. Only Clancy stood his friend. "I think we ought to let him come," he said. "I warrant he'll be with us when he's wanted at the end, for both his horse and he are mountain bred. He hails from Snowy River up because the Osco's side, where the hills are twice as steep and twice as rough, where the horses here strike firelight and the flintstones every stride. The man that holds his own is good enough. And the Snowy River riders on the mountains make their home, where the river runs those giant hills between. I have seen full many a horseman in my wild and rugged life, but nowhere yet such horsemen have I seen." So he went. They found the horses by the big mimosa clump, and they raced away toward the mountain's brow. And the old man gave his orders, "Boys, go at them from the jump. No use to try for fancy riding now. And Clancy, you must wheel them. Try and wheel them to the right. Ride boldly, lad, and never fear the spills, for never yet was horseman that could keep the mob in sight, if once they gained the shelter of those hills." So Clancy rode the wheel, and he was racing on the wing where the best and boldest riders take their place. And he raced this stock horse past them, and he made the rangers ring with the stockwhip as he met them face to face. Then they halted for a moment as he swung the dreaded lash, but they saw their well-loved mountains full in view, and they charged beneath the stockwhip with a sharp and sudden dash, and off into the mountain scrub they flew. And fast the horsemen followed, where the gorges deep and black resounded to the thunder of their tread, and the stockwhips woke the echoes as they fiercely answered back from hills and crags that beetled overhead. And upward, ever upward, the wild horses made their way, where mountain ash and Currajong grew wide, and the old man muttered fiercely, "We may bid the mob good day, no man can hold them down the other side." When they reached the mountain summit, even Clancy took a pull. It well might make the boldest hold their breath, for the wild hop scrub grew thickly, and the hidden ground was full of wombat holes, and any slip meant death. But the man from Snowy River let the pony have his head. He swung his stock whip round and gave a cheer, and he raced him down the mountain like a torrent in its bed, while the others stood and watched in very fear. He sent the flintstones flying, but the pony kept his feet. He cleared the fallen timber in his stride, and the man from Snowy River never shifted in his seat. It was grand to see that mountain horseman ride. Through the stringy barks and saplings on the rough and broken ground, down the hillside at a racing pace he went, and he never drew the bridle till he landed safe and sound at the bottom of that terrible descent. He was right among the horses as they climbed the farther hill, and the watchers on the mountain standing mute saw him ply his stockwhip fiercely. He was right among them still as he raced across the clearing in pursuit. Then they lost him for a moment where two mountain gullies met in the ranges, but a final glimpse reveals, on a dim and distant hillside, the wild horses racing yet, with the man from Snowy River at their heels. And he raced them single-handed till their sides were white with foam. He followed like a bloodhound on their track, till they halted, cowed and beaten, and he turned their heads for home, and alone and unassisted, brought them back. But his hardy mountain pony, he could scarcely raise a trot. He was blood from hip to shoulder from the spur, but his pluck was still undaunted and his courage fiery hot, for never yet was mountain horse occurred. And up because the Oscar, where the pine-clad ridges raise their torn and rugged battlements on high, and the air is clear as crystal, and the stars they fairly glaze at midnight in the cold and frosty sky, and where about the overflow the reed beds sweep and sway to the breezes, and the rolling plains are wide. The man from Snowy River is a household word today, and stockmen tell the story of his ride. The news came down the Castlereagh and went to the world at large that 20,000 travelling sheep, with Saltbush Bill in charge, were drifting down from a dried out run to ravage the Castlereagh, and the squatters cursed when they heard the news and wished they were well away. For the name of the famous Saltbush Bill were over the countryside for the wonderful way that he fed his sheep and the dodges and tricks he tried. He would lose his way off the main stock grid and spread to the squatters' grass. He would come to a run with the boss away and swear he had leave to pass, but back of it all and behind it all, as well as squatters knew, if he had to fight, he'd fight all day, so long as his sheep got through. But this is the story of Stingy Smith, the owner of Hard Times Hill, and how he chanced on a fighting man to reckon with Saltbush Bill. 'Twas Stingy Smith at his stockyard sat and prayed for an early spring, when he started at sight of a clean-shaved tramp who walked with a jaunty swing. For a clean-shaved tramp with a jaunty walk swinging along the track is as rare a thing as a feathered frog on the desolate roads out back. And the tramp he made for the traveller's hut and asked could he camp the night. And Stingy Smith had a bright idea and called to him, "Can you fight?" "Say, what's the game?" said the clean-shaved tramp as he looked him up and down. "If it's a fight you want, get off that fence and I'll kill you for half a crown. But boss, you'd better not fight with me. Wouldn't be fair nor right. I'm Stiffen a Joe from the Rocks Brigade, and I killed a man in a fight. Did 2 years for it, fair and square, and now I'm travelling back to look for that peaceful way of life, away on the outside track." "Oh, it's not myself," said Stingy Smith as he clapped his hands with glee, "but a bullying fellow called Saltbush Bill, and you're the man for me. He's on his way with his starving sheep, and he's sure to raise a row, for he's bullied the whole of the Castlereagh till he's got him under cow. Just pick a quarrel, raise a fight, and leather him good and hard, and I'll see to it that his wretched sheep don't wander half a yard. It's a £5 job if you do it well. Do anything short of kill, for there isn't a beak on the Castlereagh. We'll find you for Saltbush Bill." "I'll take the job," said the clean-shaved tramp, "and hot as this cove appears, he'll stand no chance with a bloke like me. who's lived off the game for years, for perhaps he's learned in a boxing school and was sparred for a round or so. But I fought all hands in a 10-foot ring, each night in a travelling show. They earned £1 if they stayed 3 rounds, and they tried for it every night. In a 10-foot ring, that's the game teaches a man to fight. It was Russian clinch with Dublin rules, and we drew no colour line. They tried each night to get that pound, they got no pound of mine. If I saw no chance in the opening round, I'd slug at their wind and wait till an opening came, and it always came, and I settled them, sure as fate. Left to the ribs, right to the jaw, and when the chance comes, make sure that they're the professional bloke like me gets home with the amateur, for it's my experience every day, and I've no doubt it's yours, that a third-rate pro is an overmatch for the best of the amateurs. Oh, stop your talk, said Smith, for you waste your breath. You've a first-class chance if you lose the fight of talking your man to death. Take your swag to the traveller's hut and be sure and eat your fill, and come to the mark all fit and well to leather this saltbush bill. With Saltbush Bill and his hungry sheep were wending their weary way along the main stock route towards the Hard Times Run on a 10-mile stage a day. When he hit the Hard Times Run, Bill let them feed along, and when Stingy Smith came up, Bill said the route was surveyed wrong, and he tried to prove that his sheep had rushed and strayed from the camp at night, but the fighting man, he kicked Bill's dog, and of course that meant a fight. Well, they sparred and fought and shifted ground, and never a sound was heard but the thudding fists on the brawny ribs and the second's muttered word, till the fighting man shot home his left to the ribs with a mighty clout, and crossed with the right a half-arm blow, and Saltbush Bill went out. His head fell forward towards the blow, and their hearts with fear were filled, for he lay as still as a fallen tree, and they thought that he must be killed. Then Stingy Smith, the fighting man, lifted him from the ground, and sent back home for the brandy flask, and slowly brought him round. But his jaw was bad, his head was hurt, in fact he could hardly speak, so they let him stay till he got his wits, and he camped on the run a week. And his sheep they wandered and roamed wherever they liked to stray, till Saltbush Bill was fit once more for the track to the castle raid. 'Twas Stingy Smith who wrote a note and gave to the fighting man. 'Twas writ to the boss of the neighbouring run, and thus the missive ran. The man with this is a fighting man, once Stiffiner Joe by name. He came there murdering Saltbush Bill, though I found it a costly game. But it's worth your while to employ this chap, for I haven't the slightest doubt you'll have no trouble from Saltbush Bill while this man hangs about. Then an answer came by next week's mail with news that would appall. That man you sent with a note is not a fighting man at all. He shaved his beard and cut his hair, but I knew him at a look. That's Tom Devine, who's worked for years for Saltbush Bill as a cook. Bill coached him up in the fighting yard and taught him the tale by rote, and they shamed the fight, and they got you a grass and divided your £5 note. It was a clean take in, you'll find it wise, it'll save you a lot of pelf. When next you hire a fighting man, fight him around yourself. And the teamsters out in the castle raid when they meet with a week of rain, and the wagon bogs to its axle trees deep down in the black soil plain, and the bullocks wade in a sea of mud, straining to pull the wool, and the cattle dogs at the bullocks' heels are biting to make them pull, and the offside driver flays the team and curses them as he flogs, and the air is thick with the language used and the clamour of men and dogs. The teamsters say as they pause to rest and moisten each hairy throat, they wish they could swear like Stingy Smith when he read the neighbour's note. I had written him a letter, which I had for want of better knowledge, written when I knew him down the Lachlan years ago. He was shearing when I knew him, so I sent this letter to him just on spec, addressed as follows: Clancy of the Overflow. Then an answer came directed in a writing unexpected, and I think the same was written by a thumbnail dipped in tar. It was his shearing mate who wrote it, and verbatim I will quote it: Clancy's gone to Queensland droving, and we don't know where he are. In my wild erratic fancy, visions come to me of Clancy, gone droving down the Cooper where the western drovers go. As the stock is slowly stringing, Clancy rides behind them singing, for the bushman's life has pleasures that the townsfolk never know. And the bush has friends to greet him, and their cheery voices meet him at the murmur of the breezes on the river and its bars, and he sees the vision splendid of the sunlit plains extended, and at night the wondrous glory of the everlasting stars. I am sitting in my dingy little office where a stingy ray of sunlight struggles feebly down between the houses tall, and the faded air and gritty of the dusty, dirty city through the open window floating spreads its foulness over all. And in place of lowing cattle I can hear the fiendish rattle of the tramcars and the buses making hurry down the street, and the language uninviting of the gutter children fighting comes fitfully and faintly through the ceaseless tramp of feet. And the city people daunt me, and their pallid faces haunt me as they bustle one another in their rush and nervous haste, and their beady eyes and greedy, and their stunted forms and weedy, for townsfolk have no time to grow, they have no time to waste. And I somehow rather fancy that I'd like to change with Clancy, like to take a turn at droving, where the seasons come and go, while he faced the round eternal of the cash book and the journal. But I doubt he'd suit the office, Clancy of the overflow. 'Twas the man from Ironbark who struck the Sydney town. He wandered over street and park, he wandered up and down. He loitered here, he loitered there, till he was fit to drop, until at last, in sheer despair, he saw the barber's shop. "Here, shave me beard and whiskers off, I'll be a man of mark. I'll go and do the Sydney toff of home in Ironbark." The barber man was small and flash, as barbers mostly are. He wore a strike-your-fancy sash, he smoked a huge cigar. He was a man of note and keen at repartee. He laid the odds and kept a tote, whatever that may be. He was an SP bookmaker. And when he saw our friend arrive, he whispered, "Here's a lark, just watch me catch him all alive," this man from Ironbark. There were some gilded youths that sat along the barber's wall. Their heads were flat, their eyes were dim, they had no brains at all. 'Twas to these he passed the wink, his dexter eyelid shut. "I'll make this bloomin' yokel think his bloomin' throat is cut." And while he soaped and rubbed it in, he made a rude remark, "I suppose the flats is pretty green, way up in Ironbark." A grunt was all the reply he got as he shaved the bushman's chin. He made the water boiling hot and dipped the razor in. He raised his hand, his brow grew black. He paused a while to gloat, and then he slashed the razor back across the victim's throat. Upon the newly shaven skin it made a livid mark. No doubt it fairly took him in, the man from Ironbark. He fetched a wild up country yell that well might wake the dead to hear, and though his throat he knew full well was cut from ear to ear, he struggled gamely to his feet and faced his murderous foe. "You've done for me, you swine, you dog, one hit before I go." He raised his hairy paw with one tremendous clout. He landed on the barber's jaw and laid the barber out. He set to work with pick and nail and made the place a wreck. He grabbed the nearest gilded youth and tried to break his neck. And all the while his throat he held to save the vital spark. "Murder, bloody murder," yelled the man from Ironbark. A peeler man, a copper, a peeler man who heard that in came in to see the show. He tried to run the bushman in, but he refused to go. And when at last the barber spoke, he said, "'Twas all in fun, 'twas just a little harmless joke, a trifle overdone." "A joke," he said. "By George, that's fine, a lively sort of lark. I'd like to get the murdering swine one night in Ironbark." And now around the shearing floor the listening shearers gape. He tells his story o'er and brags of his escape. "Them barber chaps what keeps the tape, by George, I've had enough. One tried to cut me bloomin' throat, but thank the Lord it's tough. And whether he's believed or not, there's one thing to remark, flowing beards are all the go, way up in Ironbark." He came from further out, that land of heat and drought and dust and gravel. He caught a touch of sun and rested on our run until his cure was done and he could travel. When spring had decked the plain, he flitted off again, as flit the swallows. And upon that western land, when many months were spanned, a letter came to hand, which read as follows: "Dear Sir, I take my pen in hopes that all your men and you are hearty. You think that I'd forgot your kindness, Mr. Scott. Oh no, dear sir, I'm not that sort of party. You sometimes bet, I know. Well, here's your chance to show the books are frightened. Up here at Wingadee, and Billy Fife and me are training strife, and he is an all right one. Just now we're running bys, but sir, first time he tries, I'll send you word of. And by running on the crook, their measures we have took. It's the deadest hook you've ever heard of. But when we lets him go, then sir, I'll let you know, and you will have a show to put a mite on. And now my leave I'll take, yours truly, William Blake. P.S. Make no mistake, he's an all right one." By next week's Riverine, I saw my friend had been a bit too cunning. I read The Racehorse Strife and Jockey William Fife, disqualified for life, suspicious running. But though they spoiled his game, I reckon all the same I fairly ought to claim my friend a white one. For though he wasn't straight, his deeds would indicate his heart, at any rate, was an all right one. The widow sought the lawyer's room with children 3 in tow. She told the lawyer man her tale in tones of deepest woe. My husband took to drink for pains of his insides and never drew a sober breath until the day he died. He never drew a sober breath, he died without a will, and this bit of land is all I've got, the children's mouth to fill. There's Min and Sis and little Chris, they stay at home with me, and Sal, who married Green-Eyed Bob, who breaks for Bidgery, and Charlie's driving Conroy sheep along the Castlereagh, and Freddie shearing down the Bland, and Peter is away. The lawyer wrote the details down in ink of legal blue. There's Minnie, Sarah, Christopher, they stay at home with you. There's Sally, Frederick and Charles, I'll write to them today. But what about this other boy, the one who is away? You'll have to furnish his consent to sell a bit of land. Widow shuffled in her seat. Oh, don't you understand? I thought a lawyer ought to know. I don't know what to say. You'll have to do without him, boss, for Peter is away. Just hear the younger boy spoke up. He said, we thought you knew. Pete's done 6 months in Goulburn jail. He's got 6 more to do. That's in one comprehensive flash. He made it clear as day, the mystery of Peter's life, the man who was away. Sat in lordly state and purple cap sublime, and galvanised the old bush church at confirmation time. And all the kids were mustered up from 50 miles around, with Sunday clothes and staring eyes and ignorance profound. Now was it fate or was it grace, whereby they yarded to an overgrown 2-story lad from Tangmalangaloo, a hefty son of virgin soil where nature has her fling, and grows the tree fall 3 foot high and mats it in the spring, where mighty hills uplift their heads to pierce the welkin rim, and trees shoot up 100 feet before they sprout a limb. Where all is big and all is grand, and men are giants too, but Christian knowledge wilts, alas, in Tangmalangaloo. The bishop summed the youngsters up as bishops only can. He cast a searching glance round and fixed upon his van, but dumb and glum and undismayed, through every bout he sat. He seemed to think that he was there, but wasn't sure of that. The bishop gave a scornful look, as bishops sometimes do, and glared right through the pagan in from Tangmalangaloo. Come tell me, boy, his lordship said in crushing tones severe. Come tell me, why is Christmas Day the greatest of the year? Why is it that around the world we celebrate that day and send a note upon a card to those who are far away? Why is it wandering one's return with smiles and greetings too? A squall of knowledge hit the lad from Tangmalangaloo. He gave a lurch which set a shake the vases on the shelf. He knocked the benches all askew, upending of himself, and oh how pleased his lordship was, and how he smiled to say, that's good, my boy, come tell me now, and what is Christmas Day? The ready answer bared a fact no bishop ever knew. It's the day before the races up in Tangmalangaloo.